Start off, I am Helen. Really nice to meet you. I'm one of the co-chairs of the Peabody Gender Network, and absolutely not a woman working in trade. I do own a toolbox and I know how to use everything safely, and I think I know the names of pretty much all of the things in there, and I can kind of fix the dodgy boiler every once in a while. But aside from that, I am pretty much here to learn, along with you all and learn from our fantastic panel members. So just a quick introduction of our guests. We've got with us today Claire Heighton-Barge, who is People Operations Manager at Plentific. And on Plentific, we're going to hear a lot more about the work that they've done as founders of the Women's Trade Network. I'm sure Claire will share a lot of that with us. So hi, welcome Claire. We've also got Bim Balogun-Springer, who is a project surveyor at Peabody, one of our very own colleagues. Bim's got years of experience working in the trade sector and started out as a qualified plumber, so really excited to hear about her journey. We've got Olivia Williams joining us from Youth Build and actually a range of different things that Olivia works on, and she's the Industry Director for Construction at Youth Build and also the co-founder of the Women in Roofing initiative, which we're really excited to hear more about. And last but very not much least, we've got Celine Dinning, sorry if I'm getting that right, Dinning?
Yes,
Dinning, perfect. And Celine is an assistant site manager with Durkan, but also a graduate from the Youth Build programme. So she's going to talk to us a bit more about that as well. So I've just quickly introduced our panel, but I would like to hand over to each of them now to introduce themselves and talk a little bit more about how they identify with the topic of women in trade and why this was an important discussion for them to join. And then we're going to have a quick poll so that our audience members can share with us what they already know. So Claire, would you like to introduce yourself and just tell us a bit more about how this topic connects to you?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me here today. So I'm Claire, I'm a People Operations Manager at Plentific, but also one of the co-founders of the Women's Trade Network. And it all really came about from a customer need. So at the parent company, Plentific, we work with many social housing organisations, and they came to us and said, hey, is it possible to request female operatives to carry out some jobs for some vulnerable tenants, for religious purposes, many different reasons? Can we select a female? And we said no. We actually don't have that many on the marketplace, and looking into it more, there is a real disparity in how many women and men are in the trade force. So we really set about to change that, established the Women's Trade Network, and so now we encourage more women to get into the trades through fully funded courses. And then if you are qualified in a trade, we promote job opportunities and also how to be your own boss, and then start generating work through Plentific. So yeah, we try and encapsulate a lot, but we're all here really to just diversify the trade sector.
That's great to hear. Thank you, Claire. Looking forward to hearing more about that. Bim, over to you. Could you introduce yourself to us and tell us more about what you do?
Hi, I'm Bim. I started off my experience in building as an apprentice plumber. And as an apprentice, you have to be on the job as well as going to college. I was going to college 2 days a week. My first day in college, I walked into the classroom, 19 men, and I was told, sorry, love, you've got the wrong class. I said, really? I believe that I've got the right class. You lot might have the wrong class. And then they all said, she's got a gob on her. I said, yeah, I have actually. So from then, we just all become friends. And I managed to finish my course. And I thought, what else shall I do? I decided I'm going to become a surveyor. So I did my ONC in building studies. After that, I decided I want to do a degree in construction management. So when I did my ONC, I got distinction. From there, I was told, oh, my employer only going to do my degree. They're going to sponsor it for only 3 years. And it's 4-year part-time because I have to work as well. So I went to the university. It was South Bank Poly at the time. And I said to the course director, I've got a proposition for you. He said, yeah, what's that? I said, if you put me in the second year and I pass, I keep going. If I fail, I pay for the first year myself. And he said, you're very cheeky. I said, well, if I don't try, I don't get. And he said, okay. So I went into the second year and I never looked back. And since then, I've always had a job. And one thing about the building industry is you always have lifelong friendship as well. Those people who are my kind of sponsor, who were looking after me when I was doing plumbing, I'm still friends with them till now. So you will never be out of a job. You always have a job when you're in the building industry. And I think this is why some men don't want us to come into it, because it's a very good, lucrative industry. And I used to go out to school, dress up in my suit and say to the kids, guess what I do? And they said, oh, you're a manager, you're a secretary. I said, no, I'm a plumber. No, miss, you're a woman. And I said, yes, last time I checked, I am a woman. But how many of you have washing machine? They put their hand up. I said, do you know how much it costs to plumb a washing machine? At that time, it was £100. So they would say to me, oh my God. I said, yeah, and you can do 5 a day. So there's money in it as well, and you enjoy your job. Oh, we didn't think of it like that. So yeah, it's quite a good place to be.
Wow, Then that's so fantastic. And I already can't tell you how excited I am to hear more about your stories, because I just know that there are more. That's amazing. Thank you so much for being with us here today. Olivia, would love to hear more about you and why you're connected to Women in Trade.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Olivia Williams. First of all, just to say Happy International Women's Day. It is, great celebration. We should be celebrating ourselves every day, not just this week. I'm the construction director for Youth Build Ventures UK, but also I'm the director for our construction arm, which is Youth Builders. So we are working, developing, projects around social housing, where we get, great opportunities for career progression for all the young people that they come through our programs through the Youth Build Ventures. Just a little bit about myself. I've been in construction for over 24 years now. Been connected to the roofing sector for many, many years. And I've got myself a little bit of a reputation. People refer to me as a roofing lady. So where, I've been around for quite a while, people got to know me, and they don't know my name, but they actually say, this is the roofing lady. So I've got myself that label. So 10 years ago, I was involved with the National Federation of Roofing Contractors. It's something that I've been really passionate, having worked for the SMEs. I'm not a roofer by trade, but I'm very passionate, to making sure that, we encourage more women in trade to have that, network support, to have those career opportunities, to be able to have, to feel supported, to have that mentors around them, and also to be able to also mentor other young ladies that they might consider a career in roofing sector. So I set up this network group called the Women in Roofing, which was absolutely unbelievable, very, very impactful around a very traditional roofing sector where, it is like the whole construction, a lot of, mentality, male domination, and just making those, changing the mindset. And it has taken quite a lot of perseverance and, determination from all the women that they kind of supported this network and joined the network as well. So within 10 years, we have got a membership of about 400 to 500 women. We have been holding annual conferences. It really brought, those connections, and we created such a close network. And in some respect, and this is, a bit sad, in some respect, this is the only event that some of the ladies within the network will have been allowed to attend. Most of the time, they're just like, being caught on wishing their jobs. The company is not necessarily allowing them to come away from the business, but this, the celebration around women in roofing will have been their only event that they could have, attended. So we have seen some great, successes coming out of the women in roofing, and it was really good to be able to take that forward, with the Youth Build Ventures. And obviously Celine will have her own, introduction, but Celine, she kind of speaks volume here in our impact and what we can achieve at Youth Build Ventures.
That's a great segue to asking Celine to introduce herself. So Celine, last but very much not least, please do tell us about what you do and why you're here today.
Okay, hiya. So I started out as a painter and decorator, going back a few years now. So I've worked it like on the tools in the trade. And then I joined Youth Build, and I did the Youth Build course. I graduated. And then now I work for Durkan on Southmere site, phase 1B, as an assistant site manager. I started on the 1st of November, so I've not been here that long, but I'm learning a lot. Yeah, that's pretty much it for me.
Fantastic. Really, really great, and really looking forward to hearing a lot more about your experience as someone who's recently entered a role and a lot of the things you might have gone through there. So yeah. Brilliant. Thank you so much to everyone for that introduction. So we've got a quick poll that we'd like to run, and I think panelists should be able to test their own knowledge on this as well. So we've got our first question coming up here, which is, what percentage of UK tradespeople are currently women? Now, I took this from the Plentific website, so I'm hoping Claire gets this one right. So what percentage of UK tradespeople are currently women? And you can submit your answer using the blue box at the bottom of the screen. And we will, once we've got hopefully everyone's answers back, we'll take a look. So bit of an even split, 4%, 0.5% and 2% were fairly equal, and the correct answer is 2%. So just kind of ahead there, and people had got that one right, so well done. So it's a pretty low percentage, and I can see that no one chose 10%, so people were on the right track. We've got the next question. And that one is, what percentage of women working in construction said that they had experienced gender discrimination at work? So what percentage do you think that was? We've got 89, 72, 68 and 40. And the highest number of you think it was 89%, so you clearly think that this is something that's a big issue. Then by 72, then 68, and no one thought it was 40%. So the correct answer is 72%, so not quite as bad as the audience thought it was, but still definitely not a great figure. So thank you so much for choosing that one. And then the next question we've got is, what is the current gender pay gap in the construction industry? So we know there's a gender pay gap across most industries at the moment, but what do you think the pay gap is in the construction industry? See how people chose there. So biggest chunk think 18%. And the smallest chunk think 11.5. So I think, if I'm remembering correctly off the top of my head, I think the average UK across all industries, I think, is around 11.5. And the gender pay gap in construction is actually 20%. So it's much higher, even almost double what the kind of average pay gap across the UK is. And the next and the final poll question is, in the last decade, the number of women working in trade has it doubled, halved, or stayed the same? See what people thought. Hopefully ending on a slightly positive note. Let's see what people selected for this one. So most of you think that it has doubled, and you are right. So ending on a slightly positive note of our poll there, even though the earlier questions might make you think that it would be not looking good, but we're actually seeing more and more women joining that industry. So that's fantastic. Brilliant. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining in the poll. And looks like most of you are quite well informed already about this this topic. So we're going to kick off the discussion with our panel here with the first question that I have for them, which is pretty simple one, really. The International Women's Day theme for this year was breaking the bias, and I really wanted to know what biases you think women working in trade, construction, these kinds of industries, what biases do you think that they're facing today? And I think I'll put that question first and open it up to Bim and see if you've got any thoughts on that.
I think the biases that they're facing today is different from my days.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, my day, they think women are too delicate to do some jobs and we're not strong enough. But today, I think Celine will be able to be more free to answer that because she just finished being on the trade. Today is more or less like, oh, well, women can do this, but they can't really do the complete job because they're not as strong as men to do the job, especially in plumbing.
That's really interesting. So when you started or some years ago, you thought that you think the bias was that just there was no capability, and now there's some capability, but maybe not for the whole task. Celine, do you have any experiences that you want to share about what your experience of bias might have been joining the industry?
Yeah, so as a painter, people were shocked quite a lot when they found out what I'd done. A lot of the time. I didn't really experience too much bias because I think there's not a lot of heavy lifting involved or anything like that, or to painting, it's not too hard. But when I tell people now that like I've got a new job and I'm an assistant site manager, the look of shock on their face is quite funny, and then they say, no, you're not, and I say, yeah, I am. So there is still obviously a stigma around women in construction. So
do you think it is that surprises people? What do you think they expect you to be doing for a career? What do you think that
it's just not in construction, I would assume, judging by their responses, anything but that. Yeah, and then a lot of people just say, look, good, like, well done. So yeah, there is a bias there, but I've not experienced too much of it myself.
Residents even turned around to me and said, it's not a job for a woman, is it? I knock on your door, I've come to do your plumbing, and you're telling me it's not a job for a woman. And then when I finished, they said, you know, love, you're one of the best ones because you finish, you clean up and everything. And I'm thinking, well, it's not a job for me to begin with. And now, you know, so yeah.
Prove them wrong.
That's interesting. And Claire and I actually had a good discussion about that. And I wondered if you wanted to come in on that, Claire, what Ben was saying about people's experience of actually working with women in that industry. Did you have anything to add? Or
yeah, definitely. Yeah, I've spoken to a number of female operatives and they've said the same thing, that when they walk in, it's almost, oh, I wasn't expecting you. And then actually, once they've carried out the job, they're much more precise, they're much tidier, and the customers actually are much happier. So it actually increases satisfaction of the tenants because they've had a job that's been carried out really well, and it's not a complete mess by the end of it. So we've found there's been really good feedback when there are females that do go on site.
Interesting. Olivia, have you had any experiences of other kind of biases outside of things about sort of maybe to do with physical strength or capabilities? Have there been any biases you've been aware of or experienced?
Yes, I think one of the issues that I've noticed, you know, around women in trade, where a woman is capable to deliver high quality work in the same way as you know, male colleagues. You know, it is around gender pay gap. You know, they've always I've seen consistently, females being paid a lot less for doing probably a lot more work than other male colleagues. And I think that needs to making sure that there is that gender pay gap. It's going to reduce, and from the stats that you kind of shared with us earlier, it seems that there still remains a huge problem, and it needs to be addressed somehow, and it needs to be visible, it needs to be transparent around pay scales and so on. So and I think it's totally unfair where a female woman, a female trade colleague is not being paid in the same way as a male colleague. There's still that perception that there are with respect blue jobs and pink jobs, so we still have that mentality that there are specific female tasks and specific male tasks. So again, just breaking the bias to making sure that actually everybody wants to have the opportunity to do those jobs. As long as you can do it, you can deliver great work, there's no more blue and pink. So I think coming away from that.
Interesting. And kind of speaking a bit more on what Bim talked about how those might have changed over time, and both you and Bim have had various range of experiences in this industry over time, and I suppose there are biases for women in lots of different ways, and people who are not women as well, in different sort of areas to do with capacity to do something. And I know that women in other sectors face biases about maybe their caregiving responsibilities and things like that. How have you seen biases change over time in your career, Olivia, in terms of has it gone from it's just not possible for a woman to do that job at all, and now it's maybe she can do it, but she probably has to leave early to pick up her kids? I mean, are those kind of normalizing those biases that we actually see in other industries? What's your experience?
In all fairness, I think this is a wider discussion, because we know that men equally want to have more parental rights, and they want to be able to spend more time with their children. And I think it's not necessarily, a female or a male, break the bias here. I think it's just a whole industry approach, around making sure that male or female, they have stronger rights around childcare. I think traditionally, yes, the women, they would have undertaken more responsibility around childcare, but we've actually seen a big shift. Men, they take those responsibilities a lot more on. I think the issue is around retention of people in the industry. So while we have really good people joining in the industry, once they have, children, circumstances that change, the industry is still not flexible enough in terms of, flexible working hours, making sure that, we can retain those people in the industry and organize something that's, suitable to be able to retain them.
Yeah. And
Yes.
Go for it, Bim. Yeah, please come in.
I agree with you, Olivia, because when I was training, I had my daughter.
Mm-hmm.
In order to clock in, because it's the days where you have to clock in and clock out, in order to clock in for 8 o'clock, I have to get up 5 a.m. in the morning, get her ready, take her to a minder, and then clock in for 8 o'clock. And then when I finish, go and pick her up and then go home. So my days is longer than any man that I know. My body has now become used to that. Even now that I'm not doing that kind of job, I wake up 5 a.m. anyway.
Yeah.
So this is why, but it's possible. Nothing is impossible as a woman. We just have to do extra in order to get there. We shouldn't have to be. It should be equal. But we live in reality, and reality is, as women, we have to do more. During being in this construction, I've had 3 children, and they're all grown up now. So I can say you can do both. you don't have to do one. So it's possible. If I can do it, anyone can do it.
100%, Beam. 100%. Couldn't agree more. And you know, as there are women out there that they might be single parents, and you know, and some women, they actually try to develop a career as well as being good moms as well. So we know it can happen. You've done it, Beam. I've done it, and I know, you know, and this is where we create role models. It's not easy, but I think as long as you want to do it, nothing is impossible. Nothing can stop you.
Yeah, if I'm able to add to that as well, I think with training to actually get into the sector, we found that a lot is full-time, and that's something that the Women's Trade Network tries to offer is part-time courses, because many women have got children, they've got other responsibilities, maybe even care responsibilities sometimes. So being able to fit training in around those responsibilities too is so vital. So if we can get flexible working in the workplace eventually, and then also flexible training as well, then hopefully that can move more towards a more diverse trade force overall.
Yeah.
That's really interesting, and it brings me on to the next question that I had as well, and I think we can talk a bit more about that, which is what is it that we can do to kind of tackle the biases that are there and also support people to break out of those biases. So one example is there, obviously, kind of making access to training and, you know, career progression, making that as flexible as all of our working lives are. That's a really great example. Are there any other sort of evidences or ideas or examples you can think of how we can actually kind of break these biases, or how as an industry we can encourage breaking these biases? Really a question for anyone, but yeah, bring Olivia in, I think, again on this one.
I think one of our strengths of women, we actually can collaborate quite well. And when it comes to, you know, training opportunities, and you know, we have seen there are employers that are committed, and you know, there's a lot of change around making sure that everybody has got a personal development plan. They have that career progression. We know it's not happening, you know, everywhere. But I think what we do well as a group of women, we network and we mentor, we almost kind of create our own tribe, and we reach one another and we support one another really well. And I think this is, you know, just bringing Celine into this, you know, I remember one of my first encounters with Celine, you know, she was this bubbly young lady when I first met her, and, you know, she came, you know, she had a job on site, she came, and you actually spot talent, and I think it's just nurturing that talent. And one of my first discussions with Celine, I said, you're really, you know, material site manager, you know, and this is when we started to engage with the colleagues at Durkan and trying to you know, to get Celine where she needs to be. And you know, and that trade background, it gives Celine even more strength of what she, you know, where she wants to be. And you know, it's kind of fascinating, you know, probably Beam as well, you know, and you always have to meet somewhere throughout your journey somebody that really believes in you, that you can do it. And I'm not taking away, I had some great male mentors throughout my career, but I also have my own tribe of women that I can reach out with, and I can show I'm vulnerable, and I can, you know, reach out when I need help and gauge thoughts. And I think this is one of our biggest strengths, and we need to keep it going, definitely.
Yes, I agree with you, Olivia. I remember that I started with, after doing surveying, I went to work for Women and Manual Trade, which is WAMT. And they had education for women. They were attached to WEB, which is Women Education in Building. And, you know, in those days, there was so much stuff from the European Social Fund to encourage women to be, because I started plumbing in 1985 and then surveying after. So there was so much encouragement for women in those days that we were able to get other women, and I was going around to big contractor, part of my job with WAMT, Durkan, Mulali, all of them, and trying to speak to them about taking on women apprenticeship. And it was quite successful in those days. And they were taking them on and they were training them. And if they like them, they keep them on permanently. So I was going around brokering that. So we need to do more of that as women as well. That for the ones that are coming behind, we're trying to get them with the big contractors. And we should make it part of their contract that they should employ women. So then they have no choice to do it.
I'm really interested in kind of mapping out these solutions even more. And I just wondered, on that point of kind of having a network, having that kind of sisterhood, as it were, within the kind of construction trade industry. Celine, have you felt joining that industry? Obviously, you've come through Youth Build, you know people like Olivia, and you have that sort of network from where you've come from. Have you felt coming into this role where you are now that kind of thing is obvious? Is it easy to find, or do you sort of feel you've arrived and you're not really sure where that support is? How does it feel being new in that kind of role?
I feel like I've obviously had support from Youth Build, obviously Olivia, and the other women there as well, and they are like a support network, 100%. Obviously, then coming onto site, we've only got one female working in the trades, and it is quite intimidating to begin with. So it does give support, because I can always go turn back to Olivia or Youth Build for that support. Whereas, and like we said earlier about showing vulnerability, I wouldn't want to show vulnerability here. I wouldn't, because it is very much a man's world. I'm the only lady in the office. There is a document controller that's a lady as well. But so I think having Youth Build and Olivia around is definitely is my support network. But I think for other people, they don't know enough about support networks out there. So I actually spoke to Hiya, she's an apprentice electrician, and I asked her if she what would she do if she needed support from women, and she said she had no idea. So clearly it's not put out there enough for people to know about it and you use it.
Definitely. And that's good to know, because you're here in the company of people who found it somehow, but it's clearly not so readily available and maybe not out there. Claire, do you want to maybe come in and talk a little bit about what the Women's Trade Network could, what is the provision for individual women working in that sector, and how could someone like Celine engage with your network?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have our 60 plus partners. Many of them have got resident networks as well. We advertise out on social media, and we really, really push the image out there of women working on the tools. And we find that we get a really positive response rate. So currently we've actually got over 650 unqualified women just in the Southeast that want to hear more about how to enter the trade sector, which is amazing. And then we promote obviously the courses through webinars, and we love it when women can hear from others that have done it. So people like Celine, people like Bim, we find that you are so inspiring for other women. And we've even heard from them that residents sometimes say you come out almost like a hero sometimes, or if you're on site and then the men actually look at you and actually how capable you are, they go, wow, I really respect you. So you get a great satisfaction out of that. So we love telling those inspiring stories. And actually as well, the earning potential, it's a really well-paid job. And there is always opportunities out there. The construction sector is so pervasive, and there is an aging workforce, and there are going to need to be new people that come in to be able to replace those jobs. So with all of these factors considered, it's actually a really, really strong career opportunity. So that's what we try and promote. And then we offer courses to unqualified women to then start their journeys. And every single time they graduate, they get matched with a mentor, someone that's been there, that's done it, that can say, hey, right, if you're struggling with something, talk to me, we can get you through this. So that people are really prepared for what to expect when going on site, which has in a typically male-dominated sector, but hopefully we're going to change that.
It's really great to hear.
Also, we need to get CITV to be accountable to women. They're taking so much money from the construction industry, they need to start investing in women. So, I mean, I've been up to their headquarters in Kingsley once, and I've spoken to women in that environment. But we need to do more because they're taking a lot of money from the construction industry, but most of it is directed as a male colleague, not a female. So they need to start giving grants to women organizations.
Yeah, definitely. These kinds of change, it's never going to just be, I mean, it can start grassroots, and there's lots of good things that can happen at that level, but we need to have the support of big business as well. Celine, will you come in on something? Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Hello. Can I also, following from Claire and Bim?
Yeah. So
you might be aware that we've got annual events like Inspire Awards or the UK Construction Week. They organize these role model campaigns in construction industry. So there's a lot of work that's been done around breaking the bias and making sure this is not just for boys, an industry, this is, an industry that we want to encourage more schools, girls to consider the construction as a career opportunity. It's not just you just fall into construction. It's something that, consciously making those decisions when they have those career days. So, those role model campaigns, they actually play quite a key role in terms of raising the profile of successful women in trade, women architects, women that they broke the ceiling and they might be in senior levels. But that we all started from somewhere, that we all had a starting point and we have worked hard, in terms of achieving what we achieved, but sharing the successes, and we say, this is possible, you can do it, and that's really inspirational. I think it's just telling those stories is really important and showcasing that in schools. Yeah.
Celine, you were putting your hand up. Did you want to come in?
No? Oh no, sorry, I was just
checking your pen. Okay.
Sorry.
And there's a couple of comments that are really handy in the chat box for people who are joining us today. Liz has put a comment about women being underrepresented in the landscape sector, particularly horticulture and landscape construction. She wasn't aware of support groups, but has just Googled and found a couple of support groups. So I think a couple of things to look in there in the chat box, but also really that encouragement of find that network that appeals to what you're doing, find the people who are your people and really connect with them. And we'll kind of summarize and share all of those links to an email to everybody as we kind of wrap up the session. So much stuff that I have to get through, and we've got questions coming in the chat box as well. I just wondered, we were talking about kind of breaking the bias within the construction and trade industry, and Celine already shared that she's one of 2 women on her project, or even in her office, maybe the only one. So clearly there's a big group, a big community that can be allies to us, and that's our male colleagues or your male colleagues in this industry, as it is in any industry. If there are any male colleagues on the call today, I just wondered if there was any sort of thoughts or ideas about how male colleagues could be the best kind of ally to their female colleagues working in this sector. Bim already mentioned that there have been great mentors for her who have been male colleagues as well. Celine, have you got any experiences where that's been a positive interaction, or any feeling of it would have been great if someone had done this, or it would be great if whatever had been in place? Is there any kind of experiences you'd have to share?
I have to say, when I first came here, it wasn't a big deal to anyone else that I was a woman coming in. The trades on site were quite shocked at first, and I don't know why they all assumed I was in health and safety. I'm not quite sure why. A lot of them asked me, but to be quite honest, I'm trying to think how to explain it. No, really, I haven't really had that experience myself, but they have supported me so much. And I think, like, I was going through the agenda with Colin, who's in the office, and he, like, I was asking his opinion, and he said they don't, to them, they don't see it any different. But obviously, I know that's not the case all round. So, just me in particular, I probably haven't. They've been really supportive, so I haven't experienced it.
That's great. No, it's good to hear that you're having a positive experience, and I suppose maybe what we are aiming for is complete normalization, just to not have any raised eyebrows, no surprises. That it's
I
not.
think I raised my eyebrows more than anybody else, I think, when I came in, to be honest. So
Well, that's great. Yeah. Anyone else want to come in on sort of advice or suggestions we have for colleagues?
With my experience, most of the projects I've been doing, and I mean, for Peabody, I do millions of pounds of projects. I've now gone into remedial cladding and fire projects. So most of the projects I do is mostly men, tradespeople. Most of the sites I've worked on, sometimes I walk to sites and they're thinking, maybe she's the tea lady or somebody. Then I'll go in and I said, okay, so tell me what's going on the project today. And they're looking at me as if, who is she? What? I'm a Black woman. And I'm talking to people they consider as their boss. And then the person will say, oh, this is our client. This is the person in charge of the project. And they kind of, oh? And I'm kind of, yeah. You can't believe it that a woman can be in charge of a project, can you? So I'm still facing that at this level as well. And it's kind of really nice because at this level, they can't even influence my career, whereas I can influence theirs. Because if I find that, I don't care how you feel about me, as long as you do your job and you're polite to my residents. And if I find that my residents are complaining about you, I will go to the person and say, please remove them from my site. So I have influence now. It's the opposite before. So it's good to be in that end of the construction.
Great. I'm glad to hear that that's empowering for you, and that that's a positive experience now. Olivia, you had some suggestions or something to share about how our male colleagues can support us.
Well, I think it's always good to have that reverse mentorship, isn't it? So as I mentioned earlier, I have had some great male mentors, throughout my career. And I think it's just, choosing your mentors carefully and, using them as equally your role models and see how they, you can actually draw from their experience, their advice, to help you to get you to where you would like to be in your career. But what I would like to say, and I have put a link into the chat, never forget to remain true to yourself. There is a tendency where female colleagues, they feel that within a male environment, you become quite manly in the way you behave, in the way you talk, and I think it's really important you keep true to yourself. You remain, authentic. You remain genuine to that. And that video that I put into the link, it is a Pixar video, and it is really, really inspirational. It is about 8 minutes long. I would recommend to anyone to watch that. It is absolutely amazing, and hopefully you will get the message. So yeah, that would be my message. Just keep true to yourselves, be authentic, remain, who you are.
That's really great. Thank you so much, Olivia. And yeah, we'll just reshared that link. Right, I think we should move on to some of the questions that come into our chat box, so that our audience members can have their questions answered too. And just to share something on the discussion point we just had from Alison, our wonderful Gender Network member, Alison, and Peabody colleague. who says, my supervisor, Perry Hull, has this great trait of using my name when brokering my ideas, suggestions and demands to others. So I assume that Alison's talking about if she's made a suggestion and then he mentions that to other colleagues, that he credits Alison for that suggestion or that idea. And I think that is really important, and it's quite a simple, small task and small kind of action, but it makes all the difference. And using someone's name even in a conversation can really bring them in to a discussion. We were talking about that in our previous event earlier this week with Women in Power and Politics, and two of our panelists were talking about how we need to bring women into conversations in meetings where it might be a male dominated discussion otherwise. So really great to hear that you've got someone who's advocating for you, Alison. Right, looking at some of our Q&As. So we talked a little bit about this just now, and we've had one share in the chat box, or the Q&A, sorry, that says, my girlfriend recently left one job as a construction manager as she was overworked and her male bosses and peers didn't respect her emotionally intelligent way of managing people, as it seemed like the normal way to get things done was super tight deadlines, shouting, toxic masculinity. Do you have any advice for her to find a new job as she loves the work itself? How can women survive when they want to bring their own personalities and strength to work? And the link that Olivia was just talking about, and I think generally bringing your, not removing your personality in order to survive is a great piece of advice. Any other kind of additional pieces? Claire, could you come in on that? That'd be great.
Yeah. Absolutely, yeah. So part of the Women's Trade Network, for the women that are qualified already, our partners, they sign up to say, yes, we stand with women and we are inclusive and we push for equal pay and we allow you to turn up authentically at work. So I would urge her to take a look at the job openings on the Women's Trade Network site, because if she applies for one of them, she knows that they're going to be supportive of the way that she likes to work, really, and be her authentic self.
And how great for those employers to know that they're going to get the absolute best quality of new starters in their organisation. So really, it's a double win. That's great. Thank you, Claire, for sharing that suggestion. And we will link everybody to the Women in Trade Network so that you can find how you join that. That we were just mentioned by Claire. One question here,
Helen.
Yes,
for that one, I would say it helps to work for the client as opposed to the contractor. Okay. Because contractor are time-driven, cost-driven, and they just want to get the profit. Whereas as a client, you want the best. So you are in control of what's going on. So it's better if you're having difficulties working for contractor to work as a client, which is what I'm doing.
Great. Yes, great. We can follow in Bim's footsteps. That's the advice. Celine wondered if you can share your thoughts on this and how, as someone who's recently kind of joined in a role, what kind of skill sets? I know that there's obviously a range of practical skills that you need for a specific job, but generally, what kind of skill sets do you think you need to be successful in a trade construction type role or in this kind of industry? What are the skill sets that you think are really valuable?
Oh, that's a hard one. I mean, I'm definitely going to touch on what Olivia said about not changing your personality.
What have people complimented you on? What would Olivia say about you, basically? What skill sets do you think she has?
What would you say about me, Olivia? I don't know. Sorry, I'm just thinking. I think, yeah, so touching back on what somebody said in the Q&A, sorry, I can't remember the name, about how shouting's the way, like how the males shouting was the way forward, etc. I think it definitely does help coming from a complete different, don't know what the word is, perspective, or I'm not really sure at this moment.
We can come back to you on it, don't worry. Yeah, if you have any.
Helen, can I just say, you know, one of the greatest qualities for Celine is she's extremely confident. So when she's in a group, and within her group at Build, she was the only female, and the rest were just male students. And my goodness, she was just absolutely leading. She was a true leader. She was just like supporting the guys to get them through training, and she's shown, you know, some real leadership there. So confidence, you know, real leadership, listening, you know, and you know, taking things on board, and not being afraid to talk. And that's kind of Celine summarizing her very quickly, you know, in terms of my own observations. And I think that comes very, very, you know, very clear when you meet Celine. And also she knows what she wants, you know, and that's really, really important. She kind of acknowledged her own qualities, and she knew that, yes, I would really like to be a site manager. I would really like to have a go, you know, to see what it involves to be a site manager. So just experiencing new things, you know, don't be afraid, just give it a go. Try something new always. So, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Just touching on what you said about being supportive. I think obviously trades get really frustrated when things don't go right, etc. And I think being supportive rather than shouting and finding a way around it and troubleshooting, I think people really appreciate that. And I think often with males, maybe isn't there so much. There's like a bit of a nurturing, I suppose, a nurturing side to it. Yeah.
That's brilliant, and echoed in the chat box here by Alison, who said women listen to the customer, take their preferences and ideas on board without seeing it as a challenge. And that's really kind of attuned to what you're talking about in terms of actually being solutions oriented is a great skill to have, and something that you found really useful. So fantastic.
Yeah, you have to be a people's person, because you have to be able to liaise with different people on different levels, different stakeholders. So that's one thing you have to be. You have to be a people's person, even though you don't want to be, because you're dealing with people all the time. You have to be a people's person. And I've been told that I'm hard, but I'm fair. I'm happy with that. I'm happy with that description.
With yourself is really key.
Yes, that's me. So yeah.
Little bit of a tough one, and I think a lot of what you've shared has already inspired me to leave my job and try and move into BIM's team. So, but a really, I think, important question shared by someone in the Q&A here. As a minority, and knowing what we know about the industry, as shown by the statistics, why would we encourage our children into this industry when there are so many other industries to choose from? We've shared already a lot about what the great kind of positives of this industry are, but does anyone have anything they'd like to kind of come in on why it's so important, not only for women to join, but also women of colour?
I do. If women did not fight for us to vote, we'll be voting today. Why should we, fight for that? So if we can fight for that, we can fight for any industry. We are entitled, as well as everybody else, to be in the construction industry, and we're not going anywhere. So I don't even think about not being in it. So yeah.
I think if you don't mind me saying something, I think you can't expect the bias to be broken if we don't change anything. And so far, women haven't been encouraged to be in construction. So when the question was asked, why should we? What was the question? It was why should we encourage our children to go into construction? Well, because otherwise nothing's going to change. You can't change nothing and expect a different outcome. You've got to change something for a different outcome. And so it is a brilliant sector to get into. And the only way the bias will be broken is if women do keep continuing to join. Or the outcome's just going to stay the same.
Yeah, I think one of the contributors, one of our partners actually for the Women's Trade Network, she spoke about how she started in an office job because it was just the path that she thought that she should take. She didn't really get much job satisfaction out of it because it didn't speak to her natural interests. And so when she started making the move to go over and working really, really hard to get into the trade sector, when she actually was an operative on the tools, she said the job satisfaction that she got out of it was immense. So she followed her passion and she followed her pride. And I think if that's something that anybody wants to do, they absolutely should do it, irrespective of whether it's a male dominated industry or not. Follow your passions and yeah, make the change, as the ladies are saying.
Brilliant. Yeah, and it's definitely intimidating to be a pioneer and to sort of almost be a spokesperson for an entire gender within an industry, and potentially even for speaking for your ethnicity as well. And I think that's a lot of pressure, and I can understand why people feel intimidated by that. But I think having those support networks that support you to be feeling safe while doing that is really, really key, and finding someone who inspires you, which hopefully you have done if you join this call, because you've got lots of options here. I just wondered if Bim could tell us any more. We've got a Q&A about whether Peabody has any policies around gender equality on construction sites when building new homes, things like anti-catcalling and policies like that. Do you know what Peabody's kind of set up is that around that?
Yes. Peabody does have a policy on that, you know, you don't do things like catcalling, because I was working in one of our estates, Peabody Estate, and I had a woman come into the office and said, every time I walk past, this is what happened. And luckily I was on site that day, so I said, okay. So I asked the contractor, the main contractor, to give a toolbox talk on catcalling. And if this woman or anybody else come back in, the operative will have to be removed from my site. And it was understood, and it never happened again on that estate. So yeah, there are things that we can do as Peabody employee to stop that kind of things.
Great. Well, I think we're almost coming to time, and we've had such a great discussion, and I really, with the chat box has just been so engaged. We've had so many comments and people getting involved, so I really hope that everybody has found it useful. I just wanted to kind of open it out and say, is there anything that anybody really came to say that they didn't get to say, and just want to kind of be able to wrap up and say, is there any message that you really wanted to get across that you haven't felt you've been able to say today?
My message is, be the change. Encourage other women. And if we that are here can do it, you can do it too, just with a little support from your sisterhood.
Thank you, Bim. So inspired by you. I really am considering my career. Just to have the opportunity to work alongside such inspirational people. Thank you, Bim. Claire, did you have anything you wanted to say that you didn't get to say?
I think just echoing exactly what Bim says, I think I might even change my job now as well and go join Bim's team. But exactly that, it's be the change, keep pushing forward. I think we are definitely starting to see change. Every time we speak to new partners, they say, yes, this is really high on our agenda. We want to get more women into the workforce. Help us, how can we do it? So I think it's a really encouraging signs that things are starting to change. So let's ride the wave and let's keep going with it.
Olivia, anything that you wanted to say?
Well, I just want to echo Bim, and Bim is kind of it's just be the change. If you want to see change, you have to be the change, and that's the only way you can change things. So yeah, that's all I can say. Yeah.
Celine, anything you want to close us off with?
Got nothing to add. Just we are the change, and just got to keep going with it, really.
Well, we're really proud to see someone like you coming into the industry, and really all looking forward to seeing what you can achieve. We will share links to all of the things that were mentioned today, to the Women's Trade Network, and all of the other things that were shared in the chat box. Thank you everybody so much for joining us today. The Gender Network is still running some events for International Women's Day, where Ellie's just posted in the chat box a link to a form where we're collecting people's experiences of bias. So if anybody feels that they want to share their experience so that we can kind of have a listening activity, please do click the link and share. But we really hope you've enjoyed the discussion today, and thank you so much for joining us for our International Women's Day events. Have a brilliant weekend, and lovely to meet everybody. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone.
Have a good weekend, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
See you later.